Joined in studio by former Camden County Sheriff John Page and current Camden County Sheriff Tony Helms. We want to talk about this a new program, DADS, which is an acronym for Dads Against Danger in Schools. Gentlemen, good morning. Great to see both of you.
Good morning, KB.
Good morning.
Let's talk a little bit about the inception of this program. John, you can probably help us with this and kind of give us an idea of what it is the program is all about. Obviously, when we talk about it, it is something that is being developed on a level of securities at no cost to the school district. But tell us when this kind of all came together and how you got involved with it.
It gets started by Steve Cedarwall, who is a former employee of mine, a friend. Worked for me a long time ago as a narcotics agent, and he did a lot of law enforcement around the country, Houston, L.A., worked for the Bureau of Land Management, worked for us. Good all-around individual. Just can't stay in one place very long.
Right.
But it came out of the school shootings. The concept is, they keep talking about retired cops doing this and retired cops doing that. Some of that I believe in, but it's got to be people that are motivated. Mm-hmm. They got to be motivated to do it in the schools. It's kind of like the teachers. I don't want to harm every teacher. I've trained a couple in my years as a CCW instructor, and they're not trainable to the level to be a security guard or a security officer. On the other hand, as we've seen in some situations with the schools, we've seen the officers not react the way they, at least in my opinion, should have. So, I
guess you're kind of focusing in on the deputies there with the Broward County Sheriff's Department that stayed outside of the building and essentially from the way that the policy was initially set up, I guess the policy was where you did wait for backup, and then that changed. And essentially those officers should have gone into the school, those sheriff's deputies should have gone into the school and performed the duties that they were required to perform.
Yes, and being a sheriff, Tony being a sheriff, we've had officers who have not obeyed all of the rules because of a particular situation. I don't know that I could have sat outside and waited for that backup, but once you got to the level of 4 people, it's almost a perfect entry team, a clearing team. Being a former SWAT officer, Tony's a SWAT officer, we both know that. So, I'm kind of poking the finger towards, what they did there.
Right.
On the other hand, they've got security. They had security officers, one of them which regretfully had been shot. I don't know I haven't heard a lot of details about what that level of security was. So. But the problem is not getting any better. It needs to be addressed. I'm not in a total agreement with the arming of all the teachers. I'm not even sure the 20% number is a good one. But I do know that there's some teachers out there that are former military, former law enforcement.
More than likely, those would be the teachers stepping up to get involved with the program.
Correct.
But you don't know that because this is all supposed to be kept under wraps. Whoever does apply and is okay through a number of tests. They go through the background check, psychological check, things like that. You still really don't know who's carrying, who's packing, and that's essentially the whole goal of this is to not allow people to know who has firearms on a school campus, be it a high school, a grade school, a middle school, a college campus. I guess it really doesn't matter.
True. And I think that's the things that we need to be looking at. To blame this all on the almighty gun is the wrong issue to be facing. This is a multifaceted. It's not one in particular issue. Mm-hmm. There was a thing the other night on the news about ISIS. What's ISIS going to do if we run them out of their last holding place? And the answer is they'll come to the United States. They'll go to Europe.
Here, yeah.
Okay, so then we're going to be facing a totally different issue. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to be ready for all of that.
Essentially, arming the citizenry, I think there's a lot of people, obviously, in Washington, D.C. that would hate to see that happen. It's unfortunate. And I wonder, Tony, being in the position you're in, have you been asked by the general public, what would you do if the government showed up in Camden County to take people's firearms? How would you defend the citizens of Camden County, or would you essentially say, okay, come right in?
Ain't no way. I will defend that right of my citizens to the end. I mean, that's just ludicrous. It's like I heard the thing on I think it was Facebook, where a guy's giving a speech about gun control and the do's and don'ts. Well, I don't know what amendment is the last one. Let's just form that one and say we're going to repeal the Second Amendment. You know, we do work for the government, and I work for the people. And if the government decides that there's no longer a Second Amendment, well, I'm going to do what's right. But no, I will defend my people of this county. I have a strong opinion on my citizens carrying a gun, only if you're allowed to, if you're legal. I hear this debate all the time about the constitutional carry versus concealed carry. I'm a little more for the concealed carry because I like the education process. We don't take a 16-year-old kid that's never been to any kind of formal training, throw him the keys to the car and say, here, go drive. You can do it. It's fine. Now, maybe around this area it would be. Think about St. Louis when that kid hits the street. There's not much difference between a 150 grain bullet and a 4,000-pound bullet.
Interesting. All right, let's get back to talking a little bit more about the program here. Obviously, this would be an opportunity for you, John, as you mentioned, to get retired law enforcement involved, maybe folks, veterans, former military, anybody else that you'd be looking at to maybe join this group and help out?
Security personnel. Over the past 20 years, security personnel levels have went up as far as their training requirements. But, federal agents, retired, there are requirements under a lot of the different law enforcement and retirements that they can't work law enforcement after they retire. So there has to be an exemption, but we got to get the legislators to look at this. It's a concept. It's the start. It's not the finished, it shouldn't be the finished product. No. And the finished product in Missouri may be different than in Texas because of other laws that are in place.
Right.
It may be different in New York. But I do know that we've got people that would like to do it. I've talked to a lot of retired law enforcement. Our Facebook thing that, we've talked about this. There are people out there that want to do it, want to look at it. But we got to get the legislature to get off of, spending $6 billion on something that in reality doesn't address some of the issues that the school problem has.
So what level, you said there's got to be a level of dedication to whoever gets involved with this particular program, and it has to be a very strong level of dedication, I would imagine, because you never know when something like this is going to happen. So whoever does get involved, I'm sure, again, they will have to go through certain checks, background check, psychological check, just because they say that, I'm former military, former law enforcement, that isn't a guarantee that they're the kind of people that you want involved with this program, because, as we've seen and heard with people, especially with those folks in the military, there are some issues once in a while when these folks come back. Sure, they'd like to help out and be involved, but it has to be one of those situations where these kind of people are mentally as well as physically and emotionally sound in order to do a job like this.
Very true. And also they have to be willing to go through training, because there has to be additional training.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because active shooter training is an additional training that law enforcement has. Mm-hmm. And it's something that has to be done. It has to create the interaction with the teachers and the school administration to make this work. Now,
did the two of you get together on this program? Did he bring you the outline of what they're looking at here? I mean, we've got the Camden County Sheriff obviously sitting here for a reason.
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I have no idea. I looked on the internet. I seen the thing that was put on there by Cedar Wall, and this appeared on my desk. And I got to tell you, I get hundreds of pieces of mail and emails. Facebook is used to dream to me now, but I caught this, and I picked it up and I started reading it. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, you and John Page think a lot alike because we work together. That's true. But I also have things we don't get along on. But that's true. But I gotta tell you, this concept is awesome. I mean, it's a way to fund it. I mean, the funding mechanism, is that not always the major problem? who in the world is going to pay for this? That's the first question everybody asks. I can tell you right now, our federal government's probably spent millions and millions of dollars just since the Florida incident on let's study this, let's study that, let's see if we can do this. I do believe one of the big things that we have a big hole in the ozone in is the mental health issue. I will not argue that, but I have a different opinion on it than most, but that's going to be one of them. But the thing is, you got to find the solution. We can keep talking about the problem, but this is a solution. It costs virtually nothing.
Well, and I look at it from the same standpoint. Different school districts are going to have different thoughts on what they feel is the best way in order to protect the faculty, the students, anybody who happens to be on campus when something like this happens. And at least they're making strides in the right direction. To constantly sit here and say, well, we don't want to do this, and this is wrong, and this is bad, and don't do this, and don't do that, and we have to have more gun laws, and everything like that. You can sit and talk about that literally till you're blue in the face. But if you at least making strides in the right direction to do something. We talked to the folks earlier in the week at Shield Solutions. I don't know if you heard the conversation or not. Spoke with a superintendent down at Fairview Schools that they actually had a disgruntled employee. That's why they got involved, because they were afraid if this person ever decided to come back on campus, this person knows basically how everything works as far as timing, when the students come in, when the students leave, where they're at, different things that are going on. So obviously that really compromises the system at that particular school. You've got the superintendent out here at Climax Springs that works with them as well. But again, maybe it's not the perfect fit, as you mentioned, for everybody. Everybody is going to do something a little different. They all have their own views and opinions as to what they feel works and doesn't work. And certainly what we would like to see is no matter what direction people go, at least they're trying to do something.
I got to say this. You got to look. I have tried very hard as sheriff. I have established community resource officers in all the outlying cities. Their main focus is the school. They are not school resource officers. However, every one of them is trained to be a school resource officer. The county does not have the funds to put school resource officers in. Now, here's where this comes in. The schools cannot afford to put a school resource officer in. So I try to provide them with as much help as I can to have somebody that's familiar. One of the things that's pointed out is the kids get to know who that officer is. He may only be in the school 2 hours a day, but the kids know who that person is. And it kind of breaks a barrier down. So schools like Climax, Max Creek, Stoutland, they have the problem of finances, as does the county. Okay, so how do you feel this? Do you just start letting the citizens come in? No, I think this organization is onto something. It's got some things we're going to have to work out, but that's like any program.
Right. 9:25 is our time, gentlemen. We need to step aside and take our first break. We will set some time aside a little bit later on in the hour to take some listener phone calls. If you've got some questions or comments, you'd like to talk with either former Camden County Sheriff John Page or current Camden County Sheriff Tony Helms. You're listening to the Morning Magazine on KRMS.
Let Evers & Company CPAs help you with your tax preparation. Whether you need help as an individual or a business, the professional staff at Evers & Company CPAs will make sure your paperwork is filed correctly. With locations in Osage Beach, Jefferson City, and California, Missouri, Evers & Company CPAs can make tax season a pleasant experience. Visit everscpas.com for assistance with tax, accounting, business consultation, and auditing needs. Call Evers & Company CPAs 573-348-4141.
Quality Roofing is the roofing company for all your roofing needs. For commercial and residential, new roofs, repairs, tear-offs, and replacements, Quality Roofing is the expert. Their knowledge of over 32 years in business and their reputation for quality workmanship make them the roofing company to call. Visit QualityRoofingCounts.com to view the photo gallery of beautiful homes and businesses utilizing the workmanship of Quality Roofing. When you have a need for a quality roofing job, think quality and call Quality Roofing. 573-552-ROOF.
The Lake West Chamber presents the 2018 Annual Business Expo, Saturday, March 3rd from 9 to 4 at the Lake Christian Academy on Highway 5 in Sunrise Beach. Enjoy a wide range of products and services under one roof, plus free admission and free parking. Come and enjoy the intimate and relaxed setting as you walk through the show. Lunch and snacks are available. Don't miss the Lake West Business Expo, Saturday, March 3rd. Call the Lake West Chamber at 573-374-5500 for information.
What's that sound? That's the sound of the dock lifeguard warning you it's not safe to be in the water around your boat dock. Dock lifeguard will always warn you if there's hazardous electricity on or around your dock. Keep your family safe with a dock lifeguard on your dock. With dock lifeguard, there's always a lifeguard on duty. Your dock may be safe, but your neighbors may not. Stop by Dock Realty on Bagnell Dam Boulevard to see a demonstration of the dock lifeguard system. Visit docklifeguard.com or call 434-6453.
The talk leader.
We love it. It's number one.
News, weather, sports, entertainment. News Talk, KRMS.
9:27. You are listening to the Morning Magazine on News Talk KRMS. John Page and Tony Helms in the studio. It's interesting as we talk about this program DADS, which essentially stands for Dads Against Danger in Schools, offering an opportunity for retired law enforcement, retired military, retired security officers to get involved with the schools. Essentially, let's talk about it. We were talking a little bit about the cost, and we were talking a little bit about pensions as far as some of these folks who have retired but may still feel a need to get involved in the community. Do you think age really matters at all of who gets involved? I mean, a certain age, let's say you get to be in your 60s, maybe your 70s. Is that an issue that concerns you or anyone else that might be involved in terms of reaction time and being able to answer the call if something happens?
No, because number one, today's 70 is years ago's 50.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest about it. You got people today doing things at 70 that nobody ever thought about doing. And to be honest with you, education is learning. Mm-hmm. And a part of that is being able to talk to the kids. And I'm 65 and I'm telling you that I think I can do it.
Yeah.
Is it something to where I want to go out and do SWAT entry? No, I gave that up a long time ago. I kind of gave up running a long time ago too, But the reality of it is, I can still shoot. I can still talk to people. Mm-hmm. I can still communicate with individuals, and I can observe people.
One of the other issues that happened, of course, with the Florida shooting, as we know, there were a lot of signs. There was a lot of writing on the wall that the shooter had issues, had problems, and it was not only pointed out by the students that were around this kid, but of course all of the instances where law enforcement had come by. The FBI was apparently aware of this. Do you see this program as something where, say for example, student comes up and maybe it's a resource officer that they come to and they say, well, so-and-so is acting a little different or a little weird or has been saying weird things like, I'm going to bring a gun to school, or has even brought a firearm into school, and that would essentially trigger a resource officer or maybe somebody involved with DADS or any other group that is in a position of keeping an eye on the schools, through the teachers, through anything else, and making these threats that are made by students or people that are talking about coming in and trying to do harm a little bit more viable, in the sense that people take these things seriously. Because in this day and age, obviously, being in law enforcement, there's that fine line. Just because somebody says something doesn't necessarily mean it's true, and you can't go after everybody for everything all the time. Because, we do have rights, and just because somebody says something, it's not necessarily something that they're going to do. Maybe they're just, being excuse the use of the word smartass for whatever reason. And, but somebody who has that law enforcement training, somebody who knows whether or not somebody is saying something and being serious, and that they need to keep an eye on them and at least watch them. And then maybe from the perspective of, hey, we've got these DADS security folks in the schools, and they've been kind of watching this. And so knowing through the training that these folks go through, you can talk to somebody like Tony or another member of the sheriff's department and say, I think we've got a serious situation here, and I think we need to bring the folks in to find out what's really going on before it gets to the point of an active shooter showing up on campus.
Well, I think that's a good point. The point is law enforcement does talk to each other, and that's what one of the breakdowns in Florida is people weren't talking to each other.
Right.
They were not communicating what the facts were. I don't think the students felt comfortable with the school administration. I don't think the school administration totally felt comfortable with the sheriff's department. So consequently, that's one of the things I think that dads will help take care of.
Right.
Because they will be able to communicate with all those levels and have the right to.
Again, let's go back to the funding aspect of it. Saving schools money, saving the taxpayers money, obviously, is a good way to look at this. But how do you deal with the issue of pensions and some of these folks that may get involved that would love to help, but maybe they're a little apprehensive because of pensions and some of the other things that you discussed here this morning?
Well, I think the biggest single thing is if we can get the laws changed state and federal level. I want to see it on state and federal, not just on the federal. It can be either one as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Because some of our pensions are taxed by the state, some's taxed by the federal. We get that exempted. It makes it viable for these retirees to do it. I mean, even on Social Security, you can only earn X amount of dollars to a certain age, and then so you're taxed again. So I'm thinking that we can get the people involved because they can do something and still get a monetary thing.
Right.
Monetary affects everybody.
Let's take a quick phone call here, and I know the caller's been holding on for just a bit. Thanks for joining us this morning. You're on KRMS.
Good morning. One of your guests, I don't recall which, said earlier, if the government, they were talking about the Constitution and the Second Amendment, if the government were to vote to take away the Second Amendment, they would do what was right. And I'd like some clarification on what they believe would be right.
What the government says. We have to live by the Constitution. I will defend the Second Amendment to the very end. But to do what's right, once the government says there's no more First Amendment, we can fight that as the people, but it still has to be enforced. I hope that explains it. I'm not for that.
So then it's the Second Amendment, the government, well, first of all, the people would have to repeal the Second Amendment. But
That's what I said.
If the government were to say, come and take guns, would you do that?
If they repealed it?
Well, the people have to repeal an amendment. The government
Exactly.
can't do it. The people have to repeal an amendment. So they would have to repeal the Second Amendment. But I'm saying if the government said, Donald Trump wants to do this seizing of guns, is what he said about, and then due process later. If the government come out and said, they don't need our AR-15s anymore, go take them, would you do that?
Absolutely not.
Outstanding. That's very good. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry I'm sorry if I confused you. What I said, what I meant to say, if I didn't, was if the government decides to change the law and they repeal the Second Amendment, what choice do we have? If we don't.
Well, that would be the first step to tyranny, sir. And
That's right.
Exactly
That's right.
That's where we would need to step up, and I would hope that sheriffs would not come and take firearms. That we would then push back.
I will not do that. I will defend that with you.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
You bet.
Just need that clarification. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks for the phone call. That's initially why we brought that up, because I'm sure you get that a lot from people.
A lot
of people.
That was one of the big questions asked of me if one of the presidents or whoever said, you got to go take the guns. I said, look, if you don't have law, what do you have? You have anarchy. I mean, we just can't do that. But I am not going to take the guns from the citizens. First of all, I don't think I got a deputy that'll do that. Second of all,
might be a little tough around these parts.
Yeah, and I'm going to be with those people that's got the guns. We have to take guns from people all the time. People that broke the law, and they have due process.
Right.
So that's where I'm at on it. I am not going to take guns. If I did hear the comment that the president made, and I wished he'd have thought about that before he said it.
Well, but as a law enforcement officer, retired now, there is an issue with dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You go out on a call, and the guy's got 200 guns, let's say 50 guns, in his house, and he just beat up his wife, and he's yelling and screaming about how he's going to shoot the next door neighbor at the same time, and you really can't take his guns. Mm. And that is an issue, and I think that part of that goes back to judicial. Mm-hmm. The courts need to set it up so that they immediately address these, not 6 to 8 weeks later, so that the cops can get the guns.
Well, I think that is an issue that they're talking about here on the national level, and I believe on the state level as well. People involved with domestic violence and whether or not they can legally obtain a firearm, if they can legally have a firearm in their possession. And that's been something, as a matter of fact, somebody who's been charged with a domestic violence issue a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, at some point, should that person be allowed at any point to go out and purchase a gun, to legally have a firearm?
I agree with that, but I'm going to go a step further. The way the laws are written now in the state of Missouri, if you're a felon, you're toast. Mm-hmm. When you were 22 years old and wrote a bad check, that was a felony, and you served all the time for that or did the restitution, what does that have to do with a gun when you're 50 years old? I'm a little mixed on that, because the way the law is, that person can't have a gun. They can't protect themselves. And I don't think that's right.
And for writing a bad check. I mean, correct. But obviously you have to look at whatever the offense was.
I think it needs to be revisited. I think they need to look at it whenever there's a violent crime. Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody that's violent, okay, do we want to turn this guy loose with a gun? That's just a question they have to answer. Well,
gentlemen, we're going to jump in and take another break, and I encourage anyone out there listening this morning to give us a call at 573-302-7000, 877-330-1150. Email us live at krmsradio.com if you have any questions for Tony Helms or John Page. And we're going to talk more about this DADS concept. Again, DADS, the acronym for Dads Against Danger in Schools. You're listening to the Morning Magazine on KRMS.
Boat owners trust their investments to Rich's Dock Company. The quality, workmanship, and design of commercial and residential custom-built docks by Rich's Dock Company are superior. The docks are a heavy steel structure with customized trim and concrete decking. Rich's Docks will build your locker, bar, dive platform, swim dock, ramps, stiff arm, and even add on to your existing dock. Their docks are designed for all waters, rough and cold. Rich's Dock Company builds the best and repairs the rest. Call 346-3800 for all your dock needs.
It's clearance time at Home Comfort Furnishings in Osage Beach, and that means savings throughout the store during our clearance sale. All clearance and discontinued items are a result of overstocked, discontinued, or as-is products. We have bar stools, dining room sets, living rooms, and bedrooms on sale. All items are in new condition unless otherwise noted. Hurry! Sale ends when items are gone. These items are sold as is. They are non-returnable, non-refundable, but very affordable during the clearance sale going on now at Home Comfort Furnishings, the lake's only full-line Ashley dealer on the Parkway in Osage Beach.
Looks like Rover is planning a trip. Rover, why do you have your chew toys, leash, treats, and your human's old sweatshirt by the door?
I'm going to Bed and Biscuit Pet Resort and Spa. All my friends barked they'd be there. Hot diggity dog! We'll socialize in the large outside area. After games of chase, fetch, hide and seek, we can go to the spa for a nice rubby-dub-dub, dinner, and a cozy night in one of their spacious rooms.
When you go out of town, treat your dog to their own vacation. See resort pictures at thebedandbiscuitresort.com.
Free spa day with a 7-night stay.
Bed and Biscuit Pet Resort.
And spa.
Hi, this is Dennis Klotzer.
And this is Ken Kinsey.
We're the proud parents of this radio station.
Since 1976, we're responsible for building and operating most of the radio stations in this region.
And we're responsible for many firsts.
We were the first to bring stereo to FM radio.
First to broadcast 24 hours.
First to offer news talk to the FM dial.
First to produce 16 hours of a live television show and broadcast it to television stations throughout the Midwest.
We were the first small market radio station to produce and broadcast television programming to network television.
And now, another first.
First to broadcast in digital high definition.
We're the first commercial radio station outside of St. Louis and Kansas City to do it.
You can now listen on your HD radio to unprecedented classic rock quality on FM 93.5.
Also, on your HD radio, you'll hear another first, continuous classic country on HD2.
You can even hear it on FM 104.9.
On your HD radio, you'll hear our news talk station on HD3.
Plus, hear that news talk station on FM 103.3 and FM 97.5.
Finally, you can hear adult favorites and smooth jazz from the Cove on HD4.
That station can also be heard in Lake Ozark and Osage Beach on FM 89.3.
Well, that's our present to the lake.
And all of this can be heard by turning your HD radio to FM 93.5.
Soon we'll have a listing of all the places at the Lake of the Ozarks you can buy a new HD radio. In the meantime,
thanks for listening.
So you're down here at the Lake of the Ozarks, enjoying the beautiful surroundings and thinking, boy, I'd like to live here, but I need a job. Well, we've got the answer. It's lakejob.com. There you'll find all the job openings in the lake area, plus long-term rental housing. The best part is it's all free. Free to post, free to browse. Lakejob.com is sponsored by American Family Insurance, Christie Farah Agency, LLC, and Hawken CarStar. Lakejob.com is proudly created by KRMS and 93.5 Rocks.
The world is changing. Are you listening?
I wish all social media was as non-addictive as LinkedIn.
News Talk KRMS. AM 1150, FM 97.5, and 103.3.
9:42, we welcome you back to the Morning Magazine on News Talk KRMS. Coming up next hour, got some folks that are going to tell us a little bit about a bingo event fundraiser coming up in Eldon to help out the Eldon Special Needs Hospital there. We'll talk with Martin on the phone, and then another one of the event organizers will be in the studio with me. Plus, Mindy Sales joins us at 10:30 with a Feel Good Friday feature, as we've been doing now for about the last month or so. Right now we're talking with former Camden County Sheriff John Page, current Camden County Sheriff Tony Helms, talking about the DADS program. Obviously, before any of this gets to the point where you're talking to schools, the schools have got to have their ducks in a row, and I would imagine insurance is a big one. Liability is something that, for one reason or another, if something happened, these districts would need to be prepared. John, what do you look at as DAD's involvement with insurance and liability, and who needs to provide what here?
I think it needs to be the school. If we're talking about something where the federal government can step up, they can help fund it. Mm-hmm. Insurance is not cheap. It can also possibly be done through the sheriff's departments or the local law enforcement as a part of their liability under the deputization of the individuals. There's a lot of options there, but I think a part of the problem that we have, at least in Missouri and a couple other states from my understanding, is the schools' insurance don't want to get involved with guns.
Right.
And I, to some extent, understand that. Sure. But the reality of it is they need to.
What about private donations? What about beating the bushes, going around to maybe various companies or individuals? We were watching that this program that goes on in Indiana is funded by private donations, and there's a lot of that, because when you start talking about wanting to fund this through the federal government and involving tax dollars, that's a subject that's as touchy as talking about abortion. In all seriousness, because people will say, you know what, I don't want my tax dollars used for that, while other people might say, I do want my tax dollars used for something like that, a program that's going to protect kids. And again, I guess you look at not only the schools and the students and the faculty and things like that, but, there are a number of taxpayers that fund these schools that don't have any kids in the school at all. It's just, you pay that property tax and you see where it goes, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't necessarily want something like this. I'm not about anybody armed being in the school, or whatever reason they come up with.
Well, I think that the private donation is something that law enforcement knows well. We've always sought it. It's something to where we use it for special projects, and this could very well be one of those.
Well, let's take an opportunity to get some more phone calls in here. I knew we would get them, and I encourage everyone listening out there who would like to pose a question or give us a comment for John or Tony here this morning. 302-7000, 877-330-1150. If you're on the phones, hold on. I'll get to you as quickly as possible. And caller, we'll start with you. You're on KRMS. Good morning.
Good morning, KB.
Good morning, sir.
Sheriff. Good morning, John Page.
Good morning.
I want to thank both you guys, especially you, Tony, right now, for being out there. You and all you guys. My prayers are with you to stay safe out there and continue doing the job you're doing. And John Page, what you have done for the community in your past years speaks for itself. I mean, there's just I know where your heart is. I know where your wife is another good example. Still working out there doing her thing. I wish that I was in better shape, that I could help you with this organization that you're committed to right now. I can do that from my house. and I will do that. When you talk about working on donations, I'm going to see that COPS, Concerns of Police Survivors, is aware of this program and can help out too, because I'm a member of that organization and I support it. And that's all done on volunteer basis. There's no government money goes to them, and they're there when police officer or any type of law enforcement is killed in the line of duty to help the families out. And that's a continuing thing. It just doesn't happen overnight, and then they're gone. And that's what your programs are doing. And if the public cannot understand the need for what you've been there, you guys are out there every day, what we need to do with this, and as far as taking guns away, Chicago's a great place to look at guns. The murder capital of the world, and they got the strictest gun laws in the country. I mean, come on. It doesn't take a genius to figure out it's not guns that kill people. I got a question for you.
Just real quick, caller. I've got a full bank of phones. Go ahead.
Okay. Have you ever asked anybody why, and I'm all for what you guys saying for guns, but why they need a fully automatic weapon in their home? I just don't understand that. Being a
Caller, thank you so much. One of you gentlemen want to take that phone call, or want to take that question, rather?
Yeah, number one, nobody has, or very few people have a fully automatic. They're semi-automatics.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you have to pull the trigger every time you want a bullet to go out the barrel.
9:48. Let's go back to the phones. Caller, thanks for holding here on KRMS. Good morning.
Morning, guys. First, a quick plug for John. Anybody wanting to take a class, I did not take one of his classes, but he taught me within 5 minutes, gave me excellent tips down at Pistols Plus, and I'm a good shot now. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Question for Tony. I have a very good friend I've known my whole life. He got in trouble when he was 18, got charged with felony theft. He now is a business owner in Camden. He provides a service to the community. He has 2 kids. He cannot own a firearm. He can't get the governor's office to give him the time of day to be able to get a written signature sign-off to be able to bring to you, Tony, to allow him to own a firearm to protect his family. What's he supposed to do to be able to, he's like, every time he tries, he hits a brick wall, and it typically winds up at the governor's office. I don't know if he's tried Governor Greitens, but is there anything you can do to help him to be able to own and possess a firearm?
I'm not really sure what my extent would be that I could do, but I would do anything. That's one of my complaints I was talking about earlier. People like that, they've done their time. Let's just get it moved on. But the first thing I would do is call your state representative and put them on it. Hold their feet to the fire and have them get an answer. That's what their job is.
Okay.
There was a change in the expungement law last year. It does make it appear to be a little easier.
Yes.
With filling out the forms and the $250 fee without an attorney.
Everything's money.
Thank you for your phone call. Let's go back to the phones. Caller, thanks for holding here on KRMS. Good morning.
Hey, KB. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Listen, John and Tony, it's Matt Burns here. I think this is a good program that you guys are trying to get going, and I'd like to also see it maybe included in the daycares centers if they want to get involved with that. Maybe you talked about that. I don't know. I missed the first part of the program, but I'd like to know what the Camden School, Dr. Hatfield, what his position is. I have not heard. My daughter will be starting school soon, and I don't know that I'm willing to send her to a school unless they take it seriously and do something about it. It's one thing to say you take it seriously. It's another thing to actually do something about it. So I'm willing to volunteer. I'm willing to help. I'll send KB my phone number. I'll email it to him. And I'm serious. Give me a call. I'll be involved if I can.
Thank you.
Thanks for the phone call. Well, of course, this is how things like this get off the ground, through a show of support from the community. And there you've got somebody who's obviously been involved in law enforcement, somebody who's a concerned parent, and somebody who would like to see a program like this get started in our area. Now, John, again, this is basically just an outline and a direction. I mean, have you folks had an opportunity to sit down and really talk about things? Because one of the things you mentioned, one of the things I was going to ask you about is the training. And there is going to obviously be a need for training, because this is something that is probably along the lines of maybe different than what a lot of officers deal with on a daily basis. If there is something that's happening at a school and somebody calls 911 or the school reaches out to the sheriff's department, you're going to get a response. There will be sheriff's deputies that show up to handle this situation. But the overall training regimen or process, you say, is different from other types of training.
Yes. School response to a school activity that's going on is different. School responses are different. They're totally different.
Yes, they are.
Because you have so many adult interactions, being the teachers that are there, you have the kids, and you have panic. And so when the response, the officers have to be able to deal with that. I would like to see at least some of the discussion, and it's mentioned in the concept paper, that it be federally so that it's the same everywhere. So if I'm on vacation in Florida or going down to see my granddaughter like I do about every 6 to 8 weeks, that if I'm there and something's happening at a school, I'm there, I can be recognized, and I can help. So it's the type of thing that we think the training should be standardized. It's a conceptual idea. We need the federal government to develop it. They got Glencoe, which is a federal facility that is nothing but training all these different agencies.
Let's see.
And they can do it a lot quicker than what we could do it on the outside.
How fast would you like to see this come together? Obviously, the sooner the better.
I'd like to see it all happen between now and beginning of next school year, but I don't know how realistic that is, because we got to get a lot of state laws changed. And I don't know that we have to get all those state laws changed dealing with the taxes, because I know that there are several people, I think, that would volunteer to do it without the tax incentive.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of touch on one thing. We were talking about liability. I think everybody involved needs to have some level of liability the way the society is today. But I got to tell you this, as a sheriff, bringing on a reserve officer or even hiring a new officer, I have to insure them individually. Depending on which insurance company it is, it's only anywhere from like $800, $1,200 a year. I don't think that's a lot of money. I mean, maybe that is to some folks, but I mean, when you're talking about what they're doing, that's kind of inexpensive. I don't think that would be a problem to put them under the umbrella of the sheriff's office or the police department or whoever. And again, like we said, not every school is going to need this.
There are a lot of things that are being talked about now after the fact with what happened in Parkland, Florida. There are a lot of schools that have already taken the incentive to protect themselves. There's schools up in Michigan, schools in Indiana that have got a particular protocol in place. They've got particular things in place like bulletproof glass. They've got smoke bombs that can be dispersed if necessary in order to stop somebody if they are in a hallway, what have you. There are things out there, and so this is not like really, cutting edge technology or anything along those lines. It's essentially folks that want to get involved, that live in a community, that want to help out the school and do so maybe through the guidance of a sheriff's department or another police department or law enforcement agency. Training is the key. Talking about getting, some sort of a funding stream, whether it be through the federal government. I think a lot of folks, again, would maybe prefer something private. Something that's done through donations, or if you could find somebody who's willing to back you funding-wise, and getting something into the works as soon as possible, so that again, that our schools become less of a target, and maybe removing the moniker as well of gun-free zones. Good Lord, if anything says let's start trouble here. It's somebody who's broadcasting that we've got a gun-free zone, like it's a badge of honor.
Target.
Exactly. Let's take another phone call. Caller, thank you for holding on here on KRMS. Good morning.
Hi. I mentioned this in a call once before, but some of the schools have like metal detectors, and they have camera systems where somebody outside can, through the police department, whatever, can monitor what's going on, see where a shooter is, see what's happening. I don't know how much that would cost to put in a school. I know it would be expensive, but could that be set up as a special ballot issue for the community to fund that and that only, what was dedicated to that? And do you have any idea how much that might run per household, say, in the county if you put in that kind of security?
Personally, I don't know how much anything like that would cost. I mean, what do you base it on? What, the assessed value of a home, or how do you set something like that up?
No idea. I mean, to me, it would seem like per household or something, but it could be a property tax, or I don't know exactly how you'd fund it, but I do think that an awful lot of people, especially after this just happened, would be willing to vote for dedicated funding. What we get tired of around here is voting for funding one item and then it goes somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you get all three of us shaking our heads yes in the studio. And I guess that's a good way to gauge whether or not a specific community would be in favor of a program like this based on some sort of a special election.
Well, let me add to something real quick. Most of the schools have camera systems and they have buzzer locks. My people actually work with them that are in the outlining schools. I can't talk a lot for Camden. I know their security is pretty tight. They have security officers there. But I can tell you on the outlining schools, my people have keys. They have the key fobs to get in on electric locks. They have lots of camera systems. They can always improve. Now, one of the things we're trying to do is get grants for the school. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of grants out there that they can fund for video security, things like this. You can't put it on personnel, but you can put it on items like that. So I'm not really sure you'd need to add a lot of expense to the taxpayers. It's already there.
See these things, instead of saying, let's have the government do it, I really like to see, okay, it's our community. Why don't we take care of it instead of having some other state, federal tax money sent in here?
Somebody could essentially dip into the fund if they wanted to use it for something else. I mean, if the fund is just sitting there and it kind of looks like a prize pig to some degree, well, let's reach in. Oh, they're not going to miss a little bit of money, and we'll make sure that they get it back, even though they're not supposed to be taking money from it in the first place. A dedicated fund is what you're saying for security. Thank you for the phone call. Dedicated fund for security issues. Well, we've obviously generated some interest, and what I'd like to do is hopefully follow this along, John, and Tony, you as well. I'd like to have you guys back as we find out a little bit more and this issue progresses, because it's obviously something that is of importance to a lot of folks around the area. Again, as far as the involvement of certain schools and school districts, that's up to them. But
it is.
To know it's there is a good feeling.
I got to steal a couple of seconds here. It's my 12th birthday for the twins. They turned 12 today. TJ and Luke, happy birthday.
Awesome. John, great to see you. Tony, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And keep us posted on the program and how it develops. Folks, we'll take the break. CBS and local news at the top of the hour, and then hour number 2 of our Friday edition of the KRMS Morning Magazine.
The voice of the lake, KRMS, Osage Beach, and KMYK, HD3, Osage Beach.
It is 10 o'clock on the Midwest Coast.